Was Battlefield 5 really as bad as people made it out to be? That's what we're going to be talking about today. Fortunately, we do have hindsight, so we can take a look at, all of these different factors that contributed to Battlefield 5 essentially being a letdown, especially when it came off of, the stellar Battlefield 1. But I want to look at 5 main reasons why I think this game, inevitably failed. And then I also want to tell you just my personal opinion at the end of the video if I think it's as bad as people made it out to be. Now, if you like this type of content, make sure that you subscribe and hit your notifications so you never miss a video from me right here, whether it's Battlefield, Call of Duty, Hell Let Loose, a number of other first-person shooters and games, all right here in one place. Let's go ahead and get into it. I think the best place to start to see if this game was as bad as people said it was is the PR and marketing. This is one of the main things that a lot of people will kind of go back to when they talk about Battlefield 5 being so bad, myself included. When you have hashtags like Not My Battlefield or Everyone's Battlefield being the major selling or canceling point of your game, that's when you know you've started off on the wrong foot. Now, don't get me wrong, social media is a great way to market pretty much everything these days, but when it comes down to a hashtag war before your game even comes out, after your trailer's announced, things aren't going well. And when you look at the dislike ratio from that initial trailer, that really says a lot. Now, if they would have come out and they would have said, hey, look, we're taking a different approach to the World War II scene. It's not necessarily historically accurate. I think they would have had a different response. But when the developers say accept it or don't buy the game, a lot of people are going to take issue with that, and rightfully so. And then, his daughter gets thrown into the mix and how he's going to explain all this to her. And it was really a bad look right from the get-go. Now, speaking of that original trailer where they show a woman with a bionic arm and katanas and everything else, now the issue wouldn't have been, I don't think, as bad if they had genuine women in the war. Some of the best snipers in the war came out of Russia, which were women. You did have a small group of fighter pilots that were women as well. But most women were in support roles, medics, nurses, things like that. Very few women, percentage-wise, ever saw the front line of combat. And so if you want to make a historically accurate World War II shooter, out of respect for the men that fought and died in that war, that's what you should be showing. Was there black people in World War II? Yeah, they had their own units, at least in the United States. They kind of served together, though. So I don't think it was necessarily an issue that they showed a woman or black people in the game. It's the way they portrayed them. And that doesn't really do them any justice for all of the nurses that saved, a lot of people in the war, or the black units that served their country. So it became this virtue signaling woke agenda that we all see, and that really just set the stage for this entire game. Next thing we'll talk about is the selection of maps. We had 8 at launch. You know how many we have now? It's 8 plus, okay, so maybe 12, I think they consider it, because we do have 4 from the Pacific Storm. You know how many we had in Battlefield 1? 31. Hell, even Battlefield 2042, which has kind of been a disaster, has like 13, even though they're split up between the modes. You're talking about it competing with games like Black Ops 4, which wasn't great, mind you. But regardless, that one had like 27 maps overall. You had Modern Warfare 2019, which Battlefield 5 was still reeling, it was still kind of hanging on in 2019. And that one had, I think 28 or 29 overall. So, to come out with 8 maps, let's say they're all bangers, right, is fine. But, that's pretty much it. And then you end up with 12 in basically a year and a half. Now, all of this could be made up with if you have a good battle royale. We've seen that with, every major multiplayer game. If you have a good battle royale, something similar to Warzone, even Warzone 2, some would say, you're going to have a pretty successful game, right? Well, Battlefield 5 screwed that one up as well. In my opinion, Firestorm is one of the most fun battle royales I've ever played. Yeah, it could get kind of campy, but I like the map. The graphics looked amazing for the time. They still look pretty good. And the actual Firestorm, compared to Gas, the fire was devastating. And it was, kind of freaked you out, man. You didn't want to get caught in that because you'd hear buildings coming down around you. It's a really intense experience. And if it's something you've never played, it's definitely worth giving a shot. But just make sure you have some time on your hands if you want to try to get into a match today. But just like everything else that they did in Battlefield 5, there was no support for it. It was just, hey, here's this awesome mode. And then that's it. No update on the maps. No new maps. Of course there was cheating and stuff. That's an issue in every single game. And it's just going to be like that. There's always going to be workarounds for anti-cheats. And, I think they had some maybe kind of a weak anti-cheat in Battlefield, but that was part of the issue. They just let Firestorm just die. Didn't try to revive it in 2042, and it's unfortunate, man, because I believe that alone, right? That came out in March of 2019. So, they sold like 7.3 million copies at the end of 2018. Battlefield 5, pretty decent, I think. But if they would have came out with that mode, and that would have been a banger, and they would have continued to update, I think they could have revived this game. You get away from the politics, you let people cool down from it, and you come out with a banger. People will quickly start to forget about all the bad things that you said most of the time. But then again, most of the time developers aren't telling you to basically piss off if you don't like our game. Now here's another thing they royally screwed up on. Most of your battle royales, Warzone, your Fortnite, your PUBGs, are free. They make money off their battle passes and skins and everything else. So you would think, following this, successful nature of those games, they would have made Firestorm free. No, it was behind the paywall. So now you have this really awesome mode that's behind a game, or that's inside of a game, that ain't doing so well. And my opinion is that they could have taken Firestorm, made it free, and then attract more people to your game. And then if that's really good, people are going to then maybe buy Battlefield 5. And so you can get those numbers up. And for some reason, they just did not do that. How can you look at a game like Fortnite with hundreds of millions of players, come out with your own battle royale that's pretty intense, man? Again, like I've talked about, Firestorm is intense and it's a great mode. But how can you look at that and say, yeah, I think we're going to put it behind a paywall? I mean, they could have made plenty of money from battle passes and everything else, but they decided to not do that. And so I think the final nail in the coffin for them, not only did they not have enough support for the game, not a whole lot of multiplayer maps, not only did they not support Firestorm, but then they put it behind a paywall. They stopped support in 2020, early 2020, April 2020. You know what else happened around that time? Yeah, COVID. So a lot of people were at home. They weren't doing anything. YouTube channels were popping up everywhere. People were playing games, stuck inside their homes. They could have taken that opportunity and said, all right, we're going to reset everything. Now we really have a lot of time. If you thought the time between November 2018 to March of 2019, when Firestorm finally came out, now you have like a year and a half pretty much of people forgetting about the mess we've created. Now let's hit it hard. People are at home. Let's try to do this, and so they did not. They decided to just, boom, cancel the game. And it is unfathomable to think that you would do that with a game like this. What made it even worse is that Battlefield 2042 didn't come out until November of 2021. So you basically had a year and a half of just, nothing. I really don't understand it. I can't even imagine doing something like that, especially at a time where everybody was at home. They had plenty of chances to save this game, man, but it started from the very beginning and went all the way up until they decided not to support it anymore. Now, it is true that some players are coming back to Battlefield 5 and Battlefield 1. Actually, if you look at the active players from 2042, Battlefield 5, and Battlefield 1, there's only about 1,000 to 2,000 player different active players, at least on Steam now, from those games. But again, filling matches, if you want to play just the Pacific Theater, good luck. You want to play Firestorm, you're going to be waiting 10 minutes to get into a match with only 15 other players, depending upon the time of day you play. This game could have been so much more. Then 2042 comes out. That's been a disaster. It's gotten a lot better, but it still ain't near what it could be. So the only thing we can hope, man, is that Battlefield 7 will be everything Battlefield 5, Battlefield 2042 have not been. They will take those mistakes to heart and make a really good Battlefield game again, because Battlefield 1 was fantastic, and I think we need to make a new hashtag. Make Battlefield great again. So was it as bad as people say? Yes and no. Everything we just talked about was a huge factor in this game dying off, and they basically killed it themselves because of everything we talked about. But the base game, if you just get down to the core of the gameplay, Firestorm, and what they put together here, I thought it was actually a pretty awesome game. All in all, they just shot themselves in the foot way too often. That's my opinion. Love to hear yours down in the comments below. Make sure you check out some of these other videos that I've done on Battlefield 2042 specifically, and actually Firestorm here recently. Leave those comments, man. Let me know, what do you think were some of the biggest contributing factors to this game dying? Do you think it was bad as people say, or not? Let me know. Thank you guys for watching. See you in the next one. And as always, hold 'em down.